Hello guys, it's Veigar V2 here. Recently it's been quite popular for streamers and one-tricks to share their thoughts on their favorite champions. I have mixed emotions on this, as I believe that one-tricks or champion mains can be quite biased. But I do think we have some good ideas to share, and it's up to Riot to decide whether or not it is worth to listen to us. If you don't know who I am, I have brought the receipts. I have seasons upon seasons of memories, just so I can introduce myself. You can skip that part if you already know who I am. I used to be a Veigar one-trick when I started the game, just like everyone else. I started the game and a Veigar one-shot me. When I was level 21, I bought a Veigar skin and I decided to main Veigar, to one-shot a bunch of noobs in bronze. Eventually, as the seasons passed, I got to high elo. I believe my peak rank's like 36 or something. The LOL Pros ladder, I'm sure we'll have that recorded somewhere in 2019 or whatever. But this, I think, is this split or last season? I don't know. But historically, I've always been like a Veigar Karthus mid lane player. But I have played Veigar in every role. Here I played Veigar top lane versus Alphari, Certus, Vadid, and Upset. I always like to view the game kind of creatively, like this is when Righteous Glory was really OP. Everybody in pro play would go this item. I thought this item makes sense for Veigar since you can easily engage with it. Here it's a very good Veigar win rate that I was doing while I was testing out Predator, and that went really well, and then everyone started playing Predator on Veigar. All of these wins are in Grandmaster, Master, MMR, so I think it's a pretty good win rate. Here, even playing some Veigar jungle. So my point is, I know Veigar, I know his weaknesses, and I have been here since Season 3 on this champion. I've been here when Da Box was the best Veigar, and he was running around with Deathfire Grasp and Moby Boots. I was here when Support Veigar was OP, and he would instant stun you. So I'm not here to suggest anything that would make Veigar OP. I do not want Veigar to be OP. I think most one-tricks or champion mains, I think most of them, they don't want their champion to be OP. I want Veigar to be fun to play. And to be quite frank, right now, I don't think Veigar is fun to play at all. I do have an ego, but I think most players I play against, I'm better than them. In lane, I feel like it doesn't matter. And I think in late game, my champion is not that strong anymore. So, I don't think instant stun should be a thing. I think that was completely OP, and Riot is in the right to nerf it. I don't think Deathfire Grasp and pressing R was skilled. I don't think this was a good meta. Even though that is why I started playing Veigar, I don't think it was healthy. In fact, I started maining Veigar because I thought it was so stupid how he could one-shot you. The thing is, the game has changed a lot since then. In current league, not only are the players better, which means telegraphed abilities like Veigar's W is not going to be as useful anymore. Back then, people got hit by more skill shots, which means they get stunned more in general by other spells, which means you're going to hit Veigar W more. People actually got hit by Veigar W as well back in the day. There's also more mobility in the game right now. There's more tools to deal with Veigar E. Back in the day, Veigar-Katarina matchup, Katarina couldn't choose where she would land when she jumped, so it was quite easy for Veigar to stun the Katarina. These days, Katarina can decide where to land on the blade, so it's near close to impossible for Veigar to land a stun. So, when you think of Veigar E, and you go back a couple of seasons, it was the most OP basic ability by far, but now with its nerfs to it, in cooldown and such, and the rise of other champions and new abilities, there's a lot of OP basic abilities. For example, a Kali Shroud. A Kali Shroud is extremely hard to balance, and to this day I would argue is one of the strongest basic abilities in the game. Grave Smokescreen as well, obviously. So, let's look what Riot has done to Veigar recently, and I'll explain what I think should be changed. So, his stun, in general, historically, when Veigar has been strong, it's been because of his stun. They added cooldown to the stun. This didn't end up mattering that much, it was fine. they nerfed Veigar's armor because he was strong in bot lane. Makes sense. I'm fine with that. No problem. I always had the mindset that if a champion is meant to be strong late game, they should be strong late game, but then they should be weak in early game. So making Veigar squishy makes sense. But the main thing here is that then Veigar has to be strong in late game, right? Which is what I think has rarely been the case for Veigar. I think in general, Veigar is a strong mid-game champion. The reason why I say this is that when Veigar has Rabadons and Everfrost, or back in the day, Rabadons and Deathfire Grasp, or Rabadons and GLP, he has like 600 AP, usually. 500, 600, something like that. And enemy doesn't have much, or if any, MR yet. So you would one-shot them. The thing is, when you have 1000 AP, and enemy buys MR, it doesn't feel like you have 1000 AP. A lot of champions, they have inbuilt true damage, or magic pen, or execute, or something. Veigar has execute on his R, but we'll get to it. It's also been nerfed. So, when you get to late game as Veigar, and you have like 1000 AP, and then you go a bit later into the game with 1.2k, it doesn't like matter. Because at that point, people have so much MR, it's like, okay, I got 200 more AP, but what does it do? You either one-shot or you don't. And if you don't, then you're useless. Because Veigar doesn't have sustained damage, right? Syndra has multiple Qs and short cooldowns, right? Spammable Q and W in late game. Veigar has spammable W, which can't really hit people, right? His E is not damage, and his R is his ulti. So he only really has Q, which again is a skill shot. So Veigar can't function as like a late game hyper carry mage. He's not gonna have the DPS like a Cassio or like a Ryze or like a Seer or Syndra. He has burst, but if enemy buys MR items, you will need a lot more AP. So yeah, my point is just, in mid game Veigar will be very strong. In late game, a lot of late game carries, they just outrange Veigar. And there gets added more mobility and more range to the game. More range champs and more random abilities that fucks Veigar. For example, Melio, you stun somebody, Melio ultis. Melio giving more range to her carries, his carries, my bad, is a counter to Veigar again. So let's move on. More base health, okay. Health increased. Yeah, health growth increased, yeah. It's fine. I mean, making him scale is fine, but this was the durability patch, I agree. So I think, right, if I remember correctly, this was durability patch. So I think that was just every champion, right? So I don't remember though if 12.10, but if I remember correctly, this was durability patch. So it's not actually a buff to Veigar. In fact, to me, it's a nerf to Veigar. Some might think that, okay, you make a scaling champion tankier, he's going to scale better. Yeah, but Veigar's big thing was one-shotting at 6, which is why in the past you would also go Spellbook sometimes and swap to Ignite and kill level 6. It became really hard to do when durability patch happened. So, yeah, that sucked, kind of. Then we go 12-11. Cooldown is now increased on the later ranks. Keep in mind here, it got increased on the first rank. Now we also have 2 seconds overall. Again, Veigar's Cage was a very strong ability, and his W has 100% AP ratio still at this point, so I didn't really mind it. But now we start getting into where my problem comes in. 13.4. Cast range increased. Shit. Cast range increased. Fuck. So when I saw this, giving range to Veigar, which was kind of his weakness all the time, which even now with this is still a weakness, like you're still outranged by Seraph and Syndra and these things. But I knew this was going to be a problem, and then immediately after he became meta, and then he just started getting chain nerfed. And this is where the problem comes in. You nerf his Cage here at a time where he, he can still afford to spam points into E because your W deals a lot of damage. So this didn't matter too much. It's a nerf, yes. Does it suck? Yes. Does this suck for Veigar? Yes. But at least you were maxing E, so it wouldn't hurt you that much. But now this happens, and this was terrible. Anyone that's watched me play Veigar and my guides, they know I do 2 points in W and then I max my Cage. Because Once you get item, once you're level 8, once you have chapter and some items and you have some stacks and you're level 8, you press WQ on the melees as they're coming into lane, you one-shot them perfectly. Nowadays, you cannot with 2 points W. You don't one-shot unless you're like mega fed. So that sucks. So you still have to put at least 2 points in W. But then this happens. AP ratio reduced. So now we have durability patch ruin your damage. AP ratio reduced 65% from 75% AP at all ranks. And when you fuck with Veigar's AP ratios, a champion that is meant to get a lot of AP, you can see why it's kind of frustrating to be useless in early game and farm a bunch of AP, but then you don't deal damage. Does not really make sense. So this happened. Okay, whatever. Again, Veigar had a pretty fucking high win rate at this point when this happened, which I never asked for this, but whatever. So, here is my problem. You now have to max W on Veigar. You max W because AP ratio changed to 70% from 100%. This is unheard of, by the way. I don't think I've ever seen this on an ability before in my life. Keep in mind, it's a normal ability. So 70% from 100%. Now, I understand 70 is still a lot for a champion that also gets a lot of AP. But if you consider the fact that Veigar has, I believe, this AP ratio for 10 years, why is it a problem now when people are more tanky? And you nerf this. This happens. This doesn't really matter because you max your Q. Before it was 60 flat. Now it's less early and then a little bit more later. So this is just whatever. Literally doesn't matter. But this is so problematic. And here's why. This is where you want to play Veigar. Versus this type of champs. Champions that go into you. Because your cage works as zoning. Akali goes in. She can't ulti out because she's caged. She's in her shroud. You can cage her whole shroud. So your whole team knows where she is. She can't leave it. You know how to kite her. Swain goes in. Has no dashes. He's a melee champion basically. Goes in. Gets caged. Aatrox goes in. Gets caged. Gets caged. Can't jump out. Stuff like this. Rakan goes in. Can't jump to his team because cage. That's where you want to play Veigar. Now, here's where the problem occurs. Veigar with 1 point in stun is 1.5 seconds. All of this type of champions where you want to play Veigar easily can buy mercs, easily gets tenacity in their runes. So this is not enough. Your W will never hit an unstunned target. And your W will never hit somebody stunned by this. And so that's the problem. And so my suggestion is, if Riot wants to make you have to max W because of this, then you have to make his base stun better. That is my suggestion. So what am I saying? I'm saying to go back on this, but not in the cooldown department. Right now, Veigar stun, this is his stun, here it is, 1.5 base. My suggestion is to bring that to 1.75 base. I have two suggestions for Veigar. You either change his E or your W. Like I said, it is bullshit that a champion that is known for his E can't max it, right? So if you're going to force him to max W, then make this 1.75 with a 2.25 max. That way, you make people not want to max it, but you don't feel like shit having only 1 point, as your W can actually hit. So 1.75 flat. I would personally say to reduce the cooldown as well, but I think main thing is make this up. Like, this has been the same for 10 years. And yeah, I don't think it makes sense. Yes, I know tenacity things got nerfed, like Green Smite, for example. But the thing is, we didn't have any of those things back in the day, when Veigar stun was considered literally the most OP spell in the game. We didn't have those things. We didn't have fucking unflinching. We didn't have tenacity in runes. Now you do. So 1.75 base. My other suggestion is that since Veigar is considered a scaling AFK late game mage, again, in my opinion, a mid game mage, but anyways, he is meant to scale lore wise. That's also kind of why I want to play Veigar, right? Theoretically, he's meant to scale. I think the mini game that Syndra has of getting amount of like spheres and stuff, right? Like stacks for herself. It boosts every ability. I think that's really cool. I think this here, every 50 stack, Veigar gets lower cooldown on W. I think that's really cool. I think Riot did a great job with that. And everyone that plays Veigar, they're looking at their stacks. They want to get stacks, dude. Get stacks. Get to late game. You want that mindset, right? That's a feeling you really like when you're playing Veigar. So, if you're not going to touch the E, right? What I would do, I would make kind of every ability get stuff from you getting stacks. So, what I'm saying, again, his spells has been the same for 10 years. 1.2 delay here doesn't make sense anymore when people have better movement, more mobility, stuff like this. Why not make it 1.3 second delay, but, so that's more, that's a nerf, but every 50 stack, it goes lower. Capping at like 0.9, something like that. I know Veigar W goes down in cooldown very quickly, and you can have a meteor shower in late game. I know that. But I can't imagine people getting perma-hit by a 0.9 delay. So yeah, I would have something like 1.3 into 1.2 where it is now. So at 50 stacks, you're back at normal. And then like 1.1, and then 1, and then 0.9 capping. So around like 200-ish stacks, it would like cap. I could see that being cool. I could see myself wanting to max W, so I could spam an ability that actually will hit. I can see a 0.9 spell hit. And this also makes it so that having only 1 point in stun will not feel unplayable. Because if this is shorter, this is the whole problem with Veigar. If this is that, and they buy 1 tenacity, this can't hit. But with my change, it can hit. Does it sound OP? Yeah, kinda. But then I think about it more, it literally never hits. You never hit W, unless they're CC'd. So yeah, that is one change. Other things I was thinking is you could make his E kind of like Mordekaiser E, where it has like magic pen to it. So I was thinking like, if people are inside of the E, they have maybe 10% lower magic resist or something like this. This wouldn't then affect squishies, but would help Veigar solve the problem of killing tanks just a little bit. I was thinking maybe changing this a little bit more towards like Synd or something somehow. Because again, you press R on the tank, they often don't really die. So yeah, this is what I was thinking. I really like Veigar's Q right now. I think it's a fine ability. I would wish to be a bit stronger in lane. But I do understand that Veigar in Riot's mind is a scaling champion, and it makes sense for this, that Veigar is meant to be scaling. Realistically though, for me, in like challenger games and pro games, you don't really get to play Veigar that way, unless it's a very specific meta, where the matchups allows you to, which again, those matchups, you need your stun to be strong. If stun is weak, there is no reason to play Veigar, unless they do the changes I say to W, because that could actually change Veigar as a champion. Another thing is that historically for Veigar, Riot has recommended Comet, and people have been playing Comet and Ludens. This type of build and version of Veigar would make more sense if they do the changes to W that I'm proposing. With a shorter W delay together with this, you can spam more spells, more Comets will proc, you're playing more type of like pokey way. Makes more sense to shift Veigar into that way too. I also personally think, at least from my opinion, playing against Veigar will probably be more fun with his W being stronger than his cage being strong. I don't think people like getting just one-shotted by his R and stunned, but if people have to actually dodge his W, I could imagine that being more like skillful. So yeah. Now, those are my thoughts on Veigar. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I did mention here, he's strong against this. The sad thing is, in this meta, there is a lot of Senna supports, there's a lot of Ashe in the bot lane, a lot of Ezreal in the bot lane, there is a lot of Syndra and Orianna in mid lane, all of them just outranging you. And then there is Seraph, who got recently buffed, woohoo, he also outranges you. Another thing that Riot did back in the day, I used to go Predator, especially when I was super outranged, so I would have counterplay. Predator got nerfed by like 20% movement speed. So that is not an option anymore either. So yeah. This is what you don't want to play Veigar against. And maybe the W change could help a little bit versus this, as your cage is not so relevant anymore versus these champions because you have no way of reaching them, which is another problem. If Veigar is meant to play versus melees, he needs to have a strong stun. Thank you for watching.